I'm going to deal with a pretty difficult topic. So, um, but in a way, they're all difficult, aren't they? When you dig into them. But this is one of the things which we often read, that nothing is taught and nothing is learned and nothing is said. And that is very difficult in terms of understanding what does that mean from a Buddhist perspective. So tonight we will try to delve into this. First of all, I have to think, what does it mean when the Buddha taught? What happened physically? Usually we don't think about that. But this text forces us to look at it, I think. When the Buddha taught, air was forced through his vocal cords, causing a vibration, and that vibration landed on the ears of Ananda and caused the cilia, the hairs in his inner ear, to vibrate. And that sent a message to the brain of Ananda, and he heard. But if you put a stethoscope to Ananda's head, you would not have heard anything. There was no sound in his head. Just like now, there's no sound of me in your head. If I put a stethoscope to your heads, I wouldn't hear myself. So the Buddhist, from a sensorial, from the senses point of view, had to remind people that if they assumed that the words of the Buddha were permanent, eternal, long-lasting, they would have violated the very aspect of his teaching, which is that nothing is permanent, nothing lasts forever, and that the same is true for the words which were taught. And so it reminds all of us that to focus entirely on the words that are being taught and to say that equals the Buddhist tradition is questionable in the sense that I have just described. So with that in mind, and let me pause. Does anybody have a question about this before I get underway? Okay. The sutra tells us in every case, everything therein is empty. Thus, absence, the existence of any self or anything belonging to a self. There is no knowing, no awareness, nothing done, and nothing undergone. This is the primary teaching of Mahayana. But it's also found in the Pali. The doctrine of emptiness is equally found anywhere in the Buddhist tradition, whether it's Mahayana or Pali or the Tantric tradition. I taught you once, but yet, I don't know if you remember that. Tonight, not but yet, but and yet. Everything is empty. There's nothing to be heard. There's nothing that was said. There's no agent. And yet, this is a very important part of Buddhist text. It doesn't always say and yet, but this is what's understood very often. So, and yet, from the first ground, which is the bhumis, from the first through the seventh bhumis, the bodhisattva achieves complete development of the effortfully. And you'll notice that I have given that a darkening. These effortfully, hard to say, implemented preliminary practice factors are conducive to knowledge. Now, it's due to the power produced by these things which are produced by effort, that from the 8th level to the 10th, all of his effortless actions then become completely developed. I believe in the Buddhist text, it is very important to make a distinction between things which were effortful, meaning they require a lot of effort, and those that are effortless, that require no effort, or actions which are happening without resistance. So in order to understand this a bit, I'm turning to knitting. I've always wanted to knit, but I just can't somehow learn how to do it. I've tried, but I fail. However, I admire people who can knit. And particularly, I admire the fact that even children can knit. Knitting, however, is effortful. Knitting takes a lot of effort. You have to learn how to do it. You have to follow a very prescribed pattern of movement of your hand and your fingers so that you can actually knit. I have memories of my grandmother knitting away as she listened to the radio. We didn't have television at that time. And then suddenly exclaiming because she looked down at her knitting and she had dropped a stitch. And she had to unravel back to where she dropped the stitch and start all over again. So it takes effort to knit. I understand that. Now, to become really proficient at knitting is very different than when a child knits. When a child knits, of course, it's the most basic kind of knitting. But if a really expert knitter wants to do a sweater or a cushion, they can make the patterns so intricate. And they have to count almost every stitch, every knit. It's all effortful. it's full of effort. And the effort pays off by those who are skilled over those who are less skilled. So in order to gain the skill needed to do the really expert stuff, practice. The child has to practice. One of the great problems that I have is with the computer. I need a lot of help with the computer. So I asked somebody, would you show me how? And far too often, younger people for whom it's effortless to do what I just asked will come over to my keyboard and go, there. And I couldn't follow what they did. I couldn't see what they did. And I think this is what we have to apply to our teaching. If you want to teach somebody, you have to be like a bodhisattva. The bodhisattva knew that even though things were effortless for the bodhisattva, they were not effortless for those around him. And so when somebody tries to teach me something on the computer, I have to say, stop, stop, stop. Let's take that one effortful step at a time. And so the poor person who's trying to help me with my computer has to do something with effort, which for them is effortless. They have to come back and do things which are elementary to them and very high tech for me. So now I think we can understand a bit about how a bodhisattva teaches. A bodhisattva could teach effortlessly. They could just simply sit there and send out a light and do something without any effort. But the problem is, just as with the person who is effortlessly telling me how to type in my computer, the bodhisattva realizes that many people are not ready for that. They have to go back and teach with effort, just as all of us do. You can't, and I can't either. Sometimes I get caught up and do it, and I hope you'll call me on it, where I teach something which I pretty much know, and I may teach it to you with very few words, and you might think to yourself, what does that mean? I don't get it. And when that happens, I've failed you as a teacher. But the bodhisattva has the same problem. The bodhisattva has to, through upaya, through skill in teaching, has to figure out how can you make something knowledgeable? How can you make it knowable for the person who's going to hear it? And so I think the bodhisattva fully comprehends what I experience when I'm sitting at my computer and somebody comes in and goes, do, there, 15 finger motions and I've got you all set. I can't do it. So I often say to people who are doing a program for me, I don't want you to do anything that takes more than 3 strokes. If it takes somebody 15 or 20 strokes, forget it. It's too hard for us. The ordinary person can't do that. So we're constantly trying to figure out how to teach the Buddhist doctrine in a way which is understandable. Now, tonight, I've chosen a very hard topic. Nothing is taught. And nothing means that there is no ability to identify an object, an agent, as long-lasting, always there, eternal. So I have to resort in terms of teaching that to tell you the difficult thing by saying, when the Buddha taught, he had to breathe. You start all the way back there. Try to think about how the Buddhist teachings, the words of the Buddha came to us. And the Buddha never spoke English. The Buddha never wrote anything down. India did not at that time have writing. It was all oral. The people who heard him, everything they heard, by the time it was heard in their brain, the original vibration was gone. It's strange, isn't it? When you hear me speak and you hear the word and you understand the word, by the time you understand it, the vibration from my vocal cords has long since ceased to exist. So in that sense, the Buddhists were teaching, nothing was taught because it's gone. You can't find it. Every time you try to identify when did I have an object to focus on, it's not there. So we have to look at this from the point of view of the effort it takes to comprehend what's been written. Now, the sutra also tells us a caravan leader comes to know the skills employed. So in wishing to lead merchants going off to some great city, before embarking, he must first ask about the road to be taken. And so when we start to teach, big thing is, from the very first, the Buddha has to have some idea where he's going and what's to be taught, what road will be taken. So we're constantly beset with that. So when you are deciding what to teach your students, you have to decide a roadmap for what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and what you're going to say with it. The sutra says that people have not reached the realization of accepting the mental states that are unproduced. Well, I have to realize I'm having trouble getting out my words.
Professor, it's okay. Please take your time. We can take a short break to ponder upon your difficult teaching today. So please take your time.
Let's take a break.
Sure, no problem.
The sutra says, not yet reached the realization of accepting the mental states that are unproduced. In other words, when do we come to the place that we accept that the mental states which are described in the Buddhist texts are actually unproduced? They are after the fact. That we have to accept the fact that by the time I think something, it's already gone. So I use the example of tennis. When you see, this is what science tells us, when you see your opponent hit the ball, if you have to think, now he's hit the ball and I must get ready to return it, you'll never return it because it's already past you. It's nothing that you can do. Our brain, however, without producing the thought of hitting the ball, controls our body and starts to move our arm so that, in fact, we do hit the ball. We do return it. But it was not a mental state which we had that caused us to return the ball. I've also told you about when you're on the freeway and a car in front of you stops suddenly. If you wait for your mental state to be produced, the car in front of me has stopped, now I must put on my brake. You've already smashed into them. You're already gone. In other words, we must come to the place where we accept mental states that are unproduced. Now, there are 5 hindrances to this. One is sensual desire. That is, our senses cause us to have desire. My sense causes me to say, oh, I want that ice cream. I want to eat it. I have that desire. The problem is that when you have desire, then you have ill will because you think, oh, I can't have it because it's not I haven't had my dinner. I can't have a dessert till I have my dinner. I have ill will. Or then I think, well, it's just too hard. I can't do something. This is the sloth and torpor, which I described to you, of Mara whispering in your ear. It's really just too hard to meditate. It's too hard for you. And this causes me to have restlessness, remorse. I'm sorry that I can't do what I want to do. I'm restless. I can't just be relaxed because I have a desire for something, and my desire is keeping me alert and trying desperately to reach the object of my desire. And all of this produces in us a strange thing. It produces doubt. I don't know what to I don't know what to do. I don't know what to believe. The five hindrances have taken me to the place where I'm just in a daze. I have one driven desire to do something. Um, I have at the same time thinking that's really too hard. I don't want to do that right now. I want to just do nothing. And then I find that I'm still restless and I'm sorry that I didn't do it. And I wish I had done it, but I didn't. And then I think, oh, I don't, I doubt that I can do, I doubt that I can hear, I doubt that I can follow. And yet, so this is a continuing theme for this lecture. And yet, we did, but yet, I wanted to go, but yet I couldn't do it. Now we have, and yet. I found that the hindrances had overwhelmed me, and I'm filled with doubt. I'm filled with remorse. And yet, Buddhist texts go on to say, no entity for whom this accumulation of action takes place. And even if I decide I destroy, I think nothing happened. There's nothing here. I destroy it. I get rid of it. And then I'm proud of myself and I say, oh, I was so lazy this morning. I thought, I can't write this lecture for today. And yet I had to write it. So I did. And then I'm proud that I wrote it and I'm glad that I wrote it. And yet, even if I take what I have written, it is not a thing which can be either held onto or destroyed. I can't do either with it. It just is. It's like gravity. You don't like gravity? It's there. It takes place whether you like it or not. And yet, gravity can never be destroyed. So, as I told you, when I fell, and the doctor said, you fell because of gravity. Gravity took you down. So, but gravity, if I say, oh, well, if gravity makes you fall, let's get rid of gravity. Who's for it? Raise your hand. Let's decide to destroy gravity. If we can just destroy gravity, we won't fall. But there is no destruction of gravity possible. Just like there is no accumulation of gravity. You can't say, I wish I had a bit more gravity here. It's taking too long to press this shirt when I'm ironing. I just need more gravity so that the iron smooths out the wrinkles in the cloth faster. There's no way to pile up gravity. There's no way to destroy it. And that's the world in which we live. And the Buddhist texts are trying to tell us there is, just like gravity, there is no person, no self that exists for a long period of time. Now, I'm 91, and I might say, I've existed for a long time. Look at me, I'm 91. Isn't that something? But in fact, when I think that 91 is an accumulation of years, from one point of view, it is. But the fact remains that all that I have is what I have at this moment. My body. But it changes in the next moment. I can't see that happening. I'm pretty slow on seeing change. I sometimes look out at the sea and the ships that pass, and the ships seem to be standing still because they're at a distance. And yet, when I look half an hour later, the ship has moved all the way to the horizon. I didn't see it move. I couldn't see it move. So I'm dealing with the fact that I can't deal with either the creation, the accumulation, or the destruction of something. So the sutra says, there is no self. There is no person. There is no lifespan. There is an absence of any inherently existing nature. There is also no agent or actions or anyone who undergoes experiences. The bodhisattva then immediately acquires the direct manifestation of the emptiness gate to liberation. It's when we recognize that our experience is momentary and that it is something which has no essential nature of lasting for a long time. When we find that out about our experience, then we are close to being able to have the emptiness gate to liberation. You know, from the Heart Sutra, Avalokiteshvara looks down and sees that all human experience is empty. And in that moment, he was free of all suffering. Because the suffering which he was feeling was dependent upon the things which he could experience. And when he realized every experience we have is empty, then you have emptiness. When I recently had some health problems, I had extreme pain, and I never really had pain before in my life. It's interesting. Pain was short-lived. I might fall and scrape a knee. I might even, when hammering, hit my thumb with a hammer. But all that pain was short-lived. It went away. And then illness gave me pain which lasted for days. And it was very hard for me to realize that the sensations of the pain I was feeling were momentary. Each event of pain was just a tiny fraction of a second. And you can withstand anything for a tiny fraction of a second. If you want me to put my hand on a hot stove, so long as you say all you have to do is touch the stove and that's it. You don't have to leave it there. Just touch it and go. We can deal with that. But what we forget is that's what real experience is. It's momentary. And when we put the various moments together and see them as long-lasting, then we suffer. That's when we suffer. And it's very hard to separate those moments and experience them as just momentariness. And yet, again, and yet, when I'm dealing with pain, when I'm dealing with suffering, when I'm dealing with remorse, when I'm dealing with ill will, when I'm dealing with a constant battery of mental events, I have to remember that the Bodhisattva contemplates the nature of conditioned things, and he sees that the real nature of things is cessation. And yet, he does not abide in cessation either. Because he has not yet achieved, not yet, you see, he has not yet achieved the complete fulfillment of the things that lead to the realization of enlightenment. So we don't always have that complete fulfillment. We're still clinging. We shouldn't get discouraged because just the thought that we are trying to experience these moments, just that thought is a real step forward. But I cannot, if I was able, and I could say, oh, look at me. I can spot and experience myself in 1 second. and know what happened to me in that second. Even if I was to do that, that's not what is meant here. What I want is to have the complete fulfillment of those things that lead to the realization of enlightenment, and clinging to the thought that I can have something, that I can hold on to something, that I can be dependent on something, is not what will lead us to the realization of enlightenment. What I want is what happens when you take a gem from the ground and you polish it, and you put it inlay. You may make it into a ring or a brooch. You make its radiance even greater by the fact that you polish it and make it into many points. All the roots of goodness of a bodhisattva, the causes for goodness of a bodhisattva, on that seventh level, the seventh bhumi before irreversibility, they are just of this sort. That is effort. We have to put forth effort. We have to polish. We have to work at things. And if we do, yes, we will see some results from our efforts. And yet, we have to ask ourselves the question of what is it which is going to lead me toward enlightenment? So the bodhisattva, for example, is able to fulfill all the 10 perfections in a single moment. And in this way, in moment after moment after moment, he is able to completely fulfill the 4 means of attraction. The 4 means of attraction being that of giving, of being able to say pleasing words, to do beneficial action, and to do actions which are the same as those of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. So a Bodhisattva can do these in every single mind moment. And therefore, they are able to complete the process toward enlightenment. Now, the sutra says the failure to know the actual truth is ignorance. And if we have ignorance, the actions that are done are delusion. In other words, if I don't know the truth of how things are momentary and unable to be held onto, if I don't know that truth, then everything which I wish for will be, in a sense, delusional. It will be diluted and it will be obscured by my ignorance. Ignorance here simply being by my inability to understand the complete fulfillment of in a moment. So a bodhisattva has a dream. It's a real dream. He's asleep. And he sees the waters of a great river. And then he dreams he falls into that river. And he is swept along by that river. And he wishes to be safe to swim to the other shore. And it takes a great effort in his dream. And he does it. He tries his best in the dream to swim out, to save himself. And then he suddenly wakes up and he stops everything that he was doing. I know I've had dreams where I'm unable to find my way home. I'm lost. I'm unable to find my classroom. I'm wandering the halls looking for my classroom. I think it's the way my brain is trying to deal with the fact that I don't go to classrooms anymore. The brain is saying, oh dear, he can't find it. Where's the classroom? Where's what I'm used to? And in my dreams, I'm looking for that classroom. And then when I wake up, it's so wonderful because there is no classroom to look for. There is no class. There's nothing. I can stop worrying. I can stop trying to do things. I can just let go. And that is the joy of enlightenment. Enlightenment is when you wake up from the dream of attachments, the dream of the ignorance about how things really function. And when you wake up, when you come to this realization, it's joyful. It's really wonderful. So when you wake up, when the bodhisattva wakes up, he universally contemplates the course of conditioned arising. That is, that things arise conditioned on something else. So they're not really standing alone. He realizes from the dream there's no reality to it. It's like a dream. It's like shadows. It's like a circumstances wherein a fool chases after a mere mirage. The Bodhisattva has this awakening as people ordinarily have an awakening from a dream. And so the Bodhisattva realizes when they're awakened, there's no effortful practice needed. Instead, he acquires those things that are effortless. And any undertaking, whether it's body, speech, or mind, the three acts, the three karmic ways of achieving our experience, they all completely cease. And yet, and once again, we are faced with, and yet, the bodhisattvas who do this, their minds had no hindrances. They were unimpeded. everywhere they saw bodhisattvas of the three time periods, past bodhisattvas, present, future. And they realized that these bodhisattvas had entirely cultivated and brought all meritorious qualities to perfect fulfillment. In other words, as the sutra tells us, by using effortlessly awakened intelligence that's produced by great skillful means and cleverly invoked knowledge, the bodhisattva on the eighth bhumi contemplates the realm in which the cognition of all knowledge is implemented. This is what is known as the bodhisattva's perfection of the inconceivable karma of body, speech, and mind. The inconceivable acts of our body, of our voice, and of our thinking. And when he has that, he courses in the sphere of ultimate reality. And yet, he still remains separate from the absolute realization of the ultimate reality. In other words, the bodhisattva does not attempt to reach that state which would remove him from any rebirth. Instead, he stays sailing on the great open ocean of experience that takes him wherever he wants to go. And he never stops this until there are no people left that he needs to help. So I hope you got some idea of what it says. There's nothing that's taught in the sense that there is nothing that is taught which I can point to right now as existing. Whatever I've taught tonight, whatever sounds came from me, they're all gone. They're already gone. And yet, they have left behind a karmic residue. And that karmic residue is not something, it is simply a process which continues to function at every moment and every moment and every moment. So if you remember any of the words which you heard, it is your process that keeps them being reproduced and reproduced. You're keeping them alive in your thinking. And your thinking is momentary. And these words are coming in flashes. So we live in a strange environment in which our brain tries to convince us that we are permanent. Our brain makes a world filled with things that are long-lasting, or so they seem to be. our brain creates for us the idea that I'm not really so different than what I was when I was 19 instead of 91. But that's the brain and its functioning, which the bodhisattva becomes aware of and says, no. When I really look at what the brain is doing, it is not what I thought it was. I thought the brain was seeing a real object out there, a long-lasting object. I thought that I was long-lasting. And now I recognize the truth. The brain hasn't deceived me in the sense of the brain doing something purposefully to deceive me. It is the way in which we are born, that we are born, and the Buddha said when he looked at humans who were being born, there is suffering. There is discontent. That's the way of, that is the nature of the world. And how do we escape from that? How do we turn that off? How do we reach an enlightened state in which we fully understand what's happened to us? It's that which a bodhisattva is trying to say to us. So nothing is taught, and yet the bodhisattva teaches. The bodhisattva recognizes the need to be like someone who's teaching a child to knit. You yourself may be a master knitter, and yet you can go and teach a child to knit. That says that what the Buddha has said all along is, nothing is taught, and yet I teach. I do something. You must figure out, he's saying to us, the nature of what I did, the nature of what my teaching is. And when we have figured out and deal with that, then we may, if we recognize the true nature of experience, we're on our way to enlightenment. Well, thank you very much.